Welcome to Give Me Credit podcast. This podcast is put on in conjunction with J.S. Whaldo, who is a underwriting genius. And I don't use that term loosely, but she's been in the pits. She's been in the business for 30 years. She knows the underwriting business. In conjunction with JS, we're going to talk about a variety of credit issues to include how to buy a house, your credit, and your credit scoring, and in conjunction with that, debt collection. Eventually, we'll get into that. Now, what we want to do is I told JS to write questions that she might have about the credit scoring and the scoring system itself, credit reports and so on. And with that, we're going to get started with some of these questions because I want you to get to know me. I want you to get to know JS. Why? Because if we have a comfortability with each other, both JS and I, along with you, the consumer, it's going to be much easier to ask questions and to get this stuff discussed, because we need to start having a discussion about credit and about how housing and so forth. It's become a big issue, and it's going to become even a bigger issue. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to JS. Welcome, JS.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mackey. Or can I call you John now? We're friends.
Yeah, please call me John.
Okay, well, thanks, John. It's great to be here. I'm really excited about this project that we're doing. I agree with you 100%. I've read so many of your articles and so many of your posts, and the clarity that you bring to such a confusing topic in everyday consumers' lives is critical. I agree that we also have a good viewpoint together, and we work well together, and that, yes, I'm on the mortgage side as an underwriter, and I can bring clarity there. But together we can bring clarity to the entire mystified and smoky world that is consumer credit and how it really works. So, again, excited about today. I want to get started with my first question. Are you ready for me?
Shoot me.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so let's talk about a consumer who has damaged credit.
Okay.
It could be collections, it could be just bad payment history, they fell on hard times, whatever it is, their credit score is down now and it's just not looking good. What are the very first three things that a consumer should do to get started on just turning it around?
Well, I think first of all is the realization that this is not a quick fix. So many people advertise what I call the fraudsters on quick fixes. What you can do, you can challenge an item on a credit report, and once you do, it automatically becomes, it's automatically removed. Or a debt collector can't can't buy a debt and come after you for the debt. I've seen so many of those out there, and it's simply not true. And if people follow that advice, they're getting into worse difficulty. So you have to establish a trust between whomever it is that you're working with. What I do is perform education. I want to help people have an understanding of the thing that is creating. I want to create knowledge for the people that use this system that dictates your financial life.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people don't think it is, as long as they can buy it, that they're good. Well, no. And we've done studies, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but we've done studies comparing a 620 score with a 720 score over the lifetime of two individuals and what they buy. They buy the same things and compare their credit reports. You're saving pure dollars and cents over $201,000 over the life. So that's roughly $300 to $400 a month
So
if
you're
you're
referring more
changing
to
in bad.
you're referring to interest rate charges
Correct. The
on the
difference on
credit
the
cards. Mm-hmm.
credit cards, home loans, student loans, things of that nature. Now,
Yeah.
what would I do first?
Yes.
I'd get an official credit report.
Hmm. That's so
You
important.
get that.
We've talked about that before, how important that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it is because it's important for a variety of reasons rather than going off and getting this credit monitoring thing.
Mhm.
Um, the There is one thing that is on the annual credit report that isn't on any other credit reporting system.
What's that?
Soft pulls. You've got two different types of pulls. You've got a hard pull and a soft pull. A hard pull is when you apply for a mortgage or a credit card or a car loan or whatever. Soft pulls are those people, entities that could be spying on you. So let's say you got a loan out there, in this case, maybe a bad debt or bad debts, your score is low. But credit card companies are constantly pulling on you. Do you know when? No, not unless you pull this annual credit report. Now, law, the law states that is once per year per bureau. I find that archaic. However, the bureaus, in their wisdom to gain uh, some good views or good reviews or whatever, said that they can do it once a week now. And so ever since the pandemic, they've been allowing credit pulls for once a week.
Right.
I suggest maybe not pulling them once a week, but at least once a month. Okay. Now, where do you go? You go to annualcreditreport.com. So
Mhm.
we get into the nuances of that later, where you pull and how you pull the analysis of the credit report. However, I just, and they're in different formats. And you have
Right.
to understand that it's I don't want to call it an easy process. They're not going to make it easy. They're going to
Mhm.
make it difficult. So when they do that, you just have to understand that it's not going to be the easiest pull for you to get. However, still do it and do it however you can. In
And
other words,
what was that website again? Let's say that one more time.
annualcreditreport.com. And you can get all three bureaus on that.
Yeah, that's a very important one to be sharing with consumers. So thank you for telling us about that. That's our number one step. Like you said, you don't even know what to question or what to do from that point if you don't even know what's out there.
Right,
Now, I've read some of your articles where you actually even talked about how to read the credit report, like what some of the codes mean. So
right,
that's one thing I want to bring up because this is not just a matter of, hey, this is what you should go do. You're actually out here in writing, telling consumers, trying to help them. What are you even looking at? I'm an
right.
underwriter. I know what you're looking at, but you as a normal consumer may not know.
Well, that's right.
Definitely, definitely lean on you, John.
When we get a credit report for a mortgage, you're going to see what they call a tri-merge,
Exactly.
meaning all three credit reports put together. It's easier to read for an underwriter rather than taking three credit reports from annualcreditreport.com.
It is 100%.
And each credit reporting agency through the annualcreditreport.com will give you a different formatted version.
Yes.
Okay, so that's to add to the confusion. Um, but there are some things that are standard. In other words, the ratings,
Great.
the lates. Um, are they late? Those are things that you have to determine. Now, just because they are late doesn't mean you still can't challenge something, because I am of the opinion that you have the right to challenge any item because we don't know if it is appropriate to be there. You follow me?
I totally follow you. Now, the question is that your next step after you get your credit report? You start determining, okay, so now that I have my credit report, should I be looking at what should I challenge? Where do we go from there?
Well, the first thing I would look at and challenge would be any sort of debt collections that are out there.
Okay.
Okay, because a debt collection might be um, a debt collection might be there's a lot of fraud involved in it. They
Yes.
may not have the documentation to prove. And anytime an item is on a credit report, they have to be able to prove that item.
Yeah, so
Okay,
that comes right back to your challenge. So whether it's just
correct,
a late payment or a
correct,
collection. Okay, great. Let's go with
correct.
that. So what do we do?
Well, you can write the letter, and I've got that letter. I'm not going to go into the nuances of the letter, but you challenge that item, saying, I believe that this item is incorrect. And I can give you that letter later, but or it's actually in some of my writings right now. So at this point, you'd have to search for it. So it's that. The other thing you might want to do would be to start uh, the rebuild process, and you can do them both at the same time. In other
Okay.
words, uh, get the bad off, get good on. Whatever you have that's good, maintain. That's very important. Is to if you've got good stuff out there,
Mhm.
don't be late on those to make up on the others, because now you've got a double problem.
Oh, that's great advice right there. I hadn't even thought about that, but that makes sense. Someone could see, oh, maybe I should, they look at the credit report, again, average consumer, and they see this collection and they're like, oh my gosh, what if I skip this payment this month? I could actually pay that off. You're saying don't do that.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. And even back up further. If you
Okay.
see a debt collection on there, don't start negotiating with them right away.
Okay.
Okay? Because first they have to prove that they own that debt. That's the
Okay.
critical part.
Let's
Okay?
talk about that just for a minute. Let's talk about, because that's something I think is one of the biggest misunderstood parts of credit. Let's talk about owning a debt. Tell us about that.
Owning a debt?
Yeah, is it you just said you have to prove that this is a valid debt, owning it, that they
Okay.
own the debt.
Yeah, and we might be going down a rabbit hole here, but when a debt is by law goes beyond 6 months without payment, bank might the bank has to write it off. Let's say it's a Visa card. That item has to be written off with it after 6 months and no payment. That's by law.
Oh,
Okay. And
okay.
that doesn't mean that they still can't collect on it. They can. But in some instances, in most instances, they take a book of debt, let's say Visa, and let's say they've got 10,000 people that they're going to turn over to debt collection. So what do? They put all of that information onto a spreadsheet without supporting documentation. And they send it, or there are bids on it. And there are bids by debt collectors. Let's say Portfolio was one that bids on that debt. Okay. Now, the average payment from a debt collector purchaser to the credit card company is
Mhm.
4 cents on the dollar. So they're paying 4 cents on your debt, and they, but they, and then they start collecting on it. Okay.
Right.
But in some instances, there are laws that show the American public what they have to do to prove that debt. And if they don't have that proof, they can no longer collect on it. They must remove. Most of the time, debt collection is going after the low hanging fruit. And when you ignore a debt collection, that's when you get into trouble. Okay. And again, we're
Okay.
going down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, we don't have to go deep into it. We're going to definitely be
Okay.
talking about that in more detail. But when we're looking at the credit report, we are looking at our soft pools, we're looking at those debt collections, and we have to start thinking about the challenges and the rebuild process. I want to go from that point to my next question, which is
Okay.
really, I think one of the things that consumers really wonder about. Okay, so you're going to get started on rebuilding your debt. How long does it really take to rebuild debt? Like, is this a 60-day process? I mean, how long in reality?
Well, no. Depends upon how bad your credit is and depends upon the score. Like if you have a bankruptcy, how can you get an FHA loan after a bankruptcy? Now, I know you can answer that, but
Uh-huh.
the answer is yes.
Mhm.
But you have to have reestablished credit. Well, who's going to give you credit to reestablish yourself if no one gives you a loan?
Right.
Okay. And that's where my book comes in. Um,
Oh, yeah, that's right. You wrote a couple of books. Which book are you talking about?
I'm talking about a do-it-yourself help book on how to reestablish credit. Now, why did I do that? I did that for a variety of reasons. Number one, the truth. Number two,
Mhm.
there are much better ways than just going out and getting a credit card. If you understand credit scoring, one of the factors in credit scoring is the balance between your installment and your revolving debt.
Mhm.
And if you only have one on there, it's not as good as um, uh, having the other one, meaning installment debt.
Right.
Well, how do you get an installment debt without buying something like a car? That would be an installment debt.
Right.
Well, you don't have to buy anything with it. And that's the point to the book, is how you establish credit lines without spending a whole lot of money. For example, on a credit card, you can self-fund. On an installment loan, you can do the same thing, but it's not through a bank, it's through a credit union.
Ah, there it is.
Okay? It's through a credit union. They are the best way to reestablish credit. And they're in business to help you, the consumer, because their goal is not necessarily profit, because credit unions are nonprofit.
Hmm.
Okay? So all they're trying to do, and there are different stipulations as to what credit union will look at. So they vary. But there's one out there, and I'm going to leave this one um, unverified. I'm not going to give you the name because
Okay.
the book has it. And that's an item that I think is vitally important. There are two different types of or credit unions. One is state chartered and the other is federally chartered.
Right.
And I found one out there that will take your debt and give you a loan based on the amount of money that you put into them. And
Well, that
thus,
makes sense. Like a secured installment loan
there you go.
from your own assets.
Right. Now, if you
Excellent.
use a bank, you need thousands of dollars to do that.
Yeah.
On a credit union, you can do it as low as $250.
Wow. So let's name your book because you've mentioned your book, and your book is obviously a very vital tool for consumers. So you're talking about the Credit Genius's Financial Reinvention, a do-it-yourself guide, how to start or restart your financial life.
That's precisely right.
Excellent. Excellent.
And you can find it on Amazon. It's not
Excellent.
that expensive, but it gives you so much information out there. Uh,
Or information
how
that's
to,
not out there, actually. It's not like average consumer doesn't know this stuff.
yeah, that's what I found out. And I've also found out that there are many loan officers that don't understand the credit report.
Yeah, I
There are
have
some
found
who
that
don't.
too. I have
Yeah,
found that too. Yeah.
I've talked with
So,
I've talked with bank presidents
hmm,
that had no idea what scoring systems they use and how it's a mess out there.
it
And
is.
people that you're getting a loan from can explain the loan that you're getting. How can you advocate for yourself? How do you know which ones?
Well, let's get back to our one next question because again, the average consumer is like, okay, well, how long does it typically take to rebuild?
The rebuild process can start in 2 months based on what is recommended. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be done in 2 months.
Right.
That means that you can get the letters, the challenge letters out. The credit bureaus have 30 days to respond. I give them 45 to 60 days to get the letter back to you
Why is
saying
that?
we've done. Saying so the challenge letter.
Oh,
The
okay. Why do you
challenge
give them
letter
that long?
because by law they have 30 days to respond. So
Okay.
I give them 15 days for the mail to get there, 15 days for the mail to get back,
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
that's 60 days.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
So, do you have any tips or tricks for our consumers of ways to speed it up or things they can do that do wrong that slows it down?
No, there's really no way to speed it up. Some people recommend that you challenge the items online.
Hmm.
Know that when you do, you give up some of your rights.
Okay, maybe we should talk about that. What are we giving up when we do that?
Well, a lot of times there are the right for mediation might
Mm,
be one. Um, they might request stuff that you don't need to give them um, to prove your documentation or to prove that they have the wrong information. I don't approach it from that way. And that's why I like the writing of it.
okay.
Because number two, when you write it to them, send them certified mail, you've got a start date. So you've got your timing clock down. They can't deny not getting it because they've signed for it. Okay, so you've got a clock that starts and you've got actual documentation that they have received that piece of information.
Okay, so that's the key part of a challenge that we want to point out is when you send that letter, you send it certified. Somebody has to sign, you get a receipt.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That way you can track it. Um, Now, when the information comes back, it's the old dazzle me with brilliance or baffle me with BS.
Right.
Um, they're going to try and send you information that might be difficult to comprehend. Yes, it's one item. Uh, it might say this item was deleted. Great. Then you know it's not on the credit report anymore. But this item has changed. Well, what changed? They might not tell you. You've got to figure that out yourself. Okay. And that's
Yeah, like now you're talking about like if I see a credit report and one of the changes could be they add a little verbiage to it that says consumer is disputing.
yes. And
Okay.
that's fine
Mm-hmm.
because most of the time they have to do that,
Okay.
especially a debt collector.
Okay.
They're mandated to do that.
Cool.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So they're going to send you back stuff. Some of it's going to be confusing. What are you looking for when they send you back, when they respond?
You have to look for exactly what you are challenging. Are you challenging lates? Are you challenging the entire item? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we're off into basically the guts of the credit report. But let's say your name. Maybe you challenged a name. Maybe your name isn't Bucky Jones. Maybe it's Buckland. So they've got a different person that they could have mixed two credit reports together and put
Absolutely.
it out there.
Absolutely.
So,
I've seen that lots of times.
oh, absolutely. How many numbers of the social security number have to match before it's only like five or six of the numbers have to match.
Yeah.
Um, Again, it's very confusing. And therein lies part of the problem is that it's not opaque. It's not crystal clear as to
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do next in order to get this out. But let's assume that these items are correct. What do you do next? You can start building your own credit. And therein where my book would help, or
Right. So
what I
now we're
talk
talking
about in
about
the book.
rebuilding credit. And so you've told us about there's a secured credit card.
Right.
That's a revolving line. And then you could possibly do a secured installment loan against your
Correct.
assets. That's an installment. And installments carry more weight than revolving, don't they?
They carry the same amount of weight.
Oh, okay.
The credit card factors in immensely because 30% of your credit score has to do with your revolving debt and your limit versus what you've actually charged. So let's say you've got a $10,000 credit card and you've got a $2,000 balance on it. So you're limiting yourself to 20%. That's great. Okay. But what
Yeah.
happens if for some reason, and it happened to me, where they reduce the $10,000 down to 2,500? Now you're at about 90% utilization.
Well, hold on. So did they send you a letter and tell you they did that?
After I found out about it on the credit report.
So you saw it on your credit report first. You weren't
Yeah.
even told ahead of time. What?
No,
So they approve people for, like you said, $6,000 or whatever, and then you're only using 20%. So they just say, okay, well, let's just reduce their credit line. That doesn't seem fair.
it doesn't, but they can do it on on a credit card. Credit cards are dangerous. They're like Russian roulette, uh,
Wow.
because you never know what they're going to do. Can they change the terms? Absolutely. That's in the contract. But we're going down a rabbit hole again, which is what I have a tendency to do.
Well, that's okay. Let's get back to our rebuilding process. What type of advice do you have for, say, families that work together to rebuild credit as a household? What type of suggestions do you have for that?
Boy, that's a loaded question. Because sometimes you get joint loans,
Hmm.
sometimes you get individual loans. There are 3 states that say if I carry the debt and I'm married and the debt's only in my name, and let's say I die, they can come after my wife,
Yeah, community property.
community property.
Hmm.
That's right. Most states it's not. Surprisingly, the states that are out west.
Yeah,
Washington and Oregon are 2 of them.
Arizona, California, Texas as well.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's a big that one's a big deal.
It is because most people are really surprised about it. Um, so
Nevada as well. Sorry, forgot that one.
is it? I didn't know
Yeah,
California was part of that.
yeah, they are.
That's interesting. I'll have to bone up on that. Um, but so what do you do? I think as a family, you have to sit down with your spouse and you have to reassess where your money is going. And it has to be a heart to heart. You can't be sitting around blaming each other. Well, you got this and you got that. And I'm just going to bring this up because there's another critical issue is when families split up
Hmm.
and people don't understand and the divorce attorneys don't understand, judges don't understand what they're talking about because let's say you're both on a house loan and the courts split the property and the wife is responsible for the or the husband is responsible for the debt. Well, what happens if he stops making the payments?
Hmm.
You're still responsible on the other side.
Hmm.
And so you got to have that delineated within the by the divorce attorney who's responsible because a court order from a court does not dictate uh, contractual law regarding
Yeah.
credit cards and loans.
Yeah, and unfortunately, what I think the important takeaway there, because the mortgage industry definitely recognizes the court order, that is first. But when it comes to credit, you're dead on, and that's an important thing people need to think about because if it's a joint mortgage and a joint anything, and even though the ex got the payment assigned to them, if they decide not to pay, it's still sitting on your credit report.
Even though the court may order a quitclaim deed.
That's right.
Again, I'm
It's
not a
still,
lawyer,
it's
but
right.
if they order a quitclaim deed, um, that just removes you from ownership, but it doesn't remove you from the responsibility of the debt.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that just really can hurt somebody's credit score. Not that
yeah.
we're saying you shouldn't get married and buy a house together, but you do need to
No,
understand the ramifications. And again, it comes to consumer education of, what you see more and more is you do see in those divorces, you do see judges, enlightened judges, say the ex has to refinance within this certain amount of time. You know,
correct.
I mean, and then it gets
Or
into all
for
the legal
sale on the
stuff.
house.
Yeah, or for sale, whatever. Exactly. I
For
mean,
sale, yeah.
that's a lot of it. But what I was thinking about was, can you explain authorized users?
Uh, I've used this, not me personally, but some of my clients. An authorized user is, let's say, my father has a credit card and he's got $100,000 limit on it and he's had it since 1975. Can I become an authorized user on that card? The answer is yes. So what happens then? All of his data comes over to my side and can help rebuild my credit. So it was just like mine from 1975.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you've got to be careful with this because let's say find a friend that's willing to do it, but his credit is horse manure. That's going to hurt you. So you've got to be real careful about that. But that is another way to help rebuild your credit. I don't recommend that as much as fixing it up as much as you can yourself, okay, without going on for that particular item. Now, I've had two or three clients that have done it. One, believe it or not, was a very famous athlete, I won't name, in which he had no credit that was good, and his parents helped him out with it. Um, so there is that. And then there was, I don't know how I met him, but he was an Academy Award winner uh, on, I forget the name, Dallas Nights or something like that. It had to do with whatever. Anyway, he won an Academy Award for it. But he was in charge of the financing for the movie.
Oh,
But
wow.
prior to that, 3 or 4 years prior to that, he had come to me and talked about credit, and we got him positioned in a way that he could now go forward with what he wanted to do on his end. I'm being cryptic. I don't want anybody to identify who this guy is. So,
Of course, that's private,
yeah,
personal data that cannot be disclosed with any banking.
right.
So when people are rebuilding their credit, it's going to take varied times, as we've talked about. I mean, the first step itself is 60 days.
Correct.
And that's when we're challenging something. How long
Just
does,
challenging it for the credit bureau.
Right.
We have to understand something that
Okay.
the law does not mandate that a credit report be right. It does not have to be correct. It only has to be correct after you challenge it and they fix it or they deny your fix.
What do you mean by that?
A creditor reports to the credit bureaus certain items. They take it, the credit bureaus, carte blanche. That is the truth.
Hmm.
So now, if you go back and you challenge the credit reporting agency, they then, the reporting agency goes back to the creditor and says, is this right? If the creditor comes back and says, yes, it is right, now they're responsible for the item that's on the credit report. So now you do a re-challenge of that particular item, and then they become responsible for the debt.
Okay, and then they are now responsible to make sure it's reported correctly.
That is correct.
Okay. And if it comes back and it's not correct, what does the credit bureau do?
They have to change it on the credit reporting system.
Okay,
And
change
a
it
lot
how?
of times, and a lot of times you've got these mom and pop shops that give out credit.
Hmm.
And let's say that happened 2 years ago and you challenge the item, but let's say that particular company doesn't exist anymore. So credit bureaus don't get any response, but it's still on your credit report.
Right.
Now it has to come up because they didn't get any response. And this is particularly helpful with debt collectors because once you challenge it with a debt collector, and that's the third part of the process, is you challenge it directly the uh, with the creditor themselves, the person that is reporting that debt. So it could be with,
So you're talking about the collection company, like Midland Collection LLC.
yep,
Okay. So they purchased a debt, right?
right,
And now they're coming and it's on your credit report, or maybe they're even coming to you and you've received letters or whatever. And you're like, I don't even really know what this debt is. When did I
right.
borrow from Midland? So you challenge it. Midland is required to provide the original proof of debt, correct?
They're, they have to prove who owns the debt because a debt collector can be assigned the debt
Mhm.
rather than own it. So let's
Okay.
say they're assigned the debt. They own that debt. They have to show you the interest rate that is being charged. If they're continuing to charge interest, what the dollar amount is on that debt, and the person that they're coming after, meaning you. Okay.
Okay.
They have to supply all of that documentation. So I'm not going to get into the weeds on it, but that's one of the things that they have to do. If they cannot do it, the item has to come off the credit report. They cannot collect on it any longer. However, if a debt collector is collecting on a debt but doesn't have it on the credit report, they can still attempt to collect on it. But you still have the right to challenge that item.
That makes sense. That makes
Right.
sense. So has to come off the credit report, but they could still come after you. And then that's when we really want to talk about your book again, because it goes to as far as all of that, because you're starting it or you're restarting it. It's dealing with creditors when that sort of thing happens. So,
Right.
so let's just talk about, okay, so we're talking about credit reports and rebuilding credit. If your credit's damaged, that's where we've started. And yeah, we go off on little bits because this is something we're passionate about. Thank you for doing that. That's wonderful.
It is. Well, yeah, it is. And thank you. But I shouldn't go down rabbit holes as much as I do. But there's a passion here, and I can see how it all fits together.
Exactly. So in your book, you actually give examples, don't you, of some of the
Yes,
letters and things like that. So I want to say the name of the book one more time, and then I'm going to give you another question. The Credit Genius's Financial Reinvention, a do-it-yourself guide, how to start or restart your financial life.
correct.
Again, you can go to Amazon for this. He doesn't charge $1 million. His dire point is to help consumers. This affects more than just getting a mortgage. This affects your life. You've talked about this. Credit scores can affect if you get the apartment,
Yeah.
how much you pay if you do need to borrow money. Um, it affects, it can even affect if you're going for a job and they pull your credit report. They could literally look at your credit report and say, oh, this person is not responsible. That's not right, but they can.
And they
So
do.
they do. So when people are working to rebuild their credit, and again, it's a slow process, let's think about this from a consumer standpoint. They went and they've done their challenges and we're now to the point where they need to rebuild their credit. How long does it take? Let's say they go get a secured card. How long does it take before it starts affecting that credit score?
Once the changes are made, if there are changes made, it's going to affect it starting immediately, meaning from the result, from 2 months, maybe even a month after you start the challenge.
Okay?
Okay. The point here is that's not the end.
Right.
You want to continue on the building of your credit and
Right.
continue on understanding what's going on and what's affecting yours and everybody else's credit, because it is going to affect everything that you do and how much money you're spending for something. We had, and I'll just, we had one individual that I was working with, and he went off and he had poor credit, but he went off and after one of the challenges that we did, we got his credit score raised up into the 640, 650 range. Now, I noticed on his credit report, he had an astronomical car payment relative to how much he borrowed. It ended up being 30 some percent on the interest rate for the car.
Wow.
So somebody saw a, and I saw a chump walk in
Yeah.
and said, we know he doesn't know what he's doing. We'll charge him what we can. And they did. I told him, I said, this is wrong, my friend. I want you to go find a credit union. He said, I belong to a credit union. And I said, go there and now apply to refinance that car. And he did. And he dropped his car payment by $400 a month,
Wow.
just the car payment.
Yeah.
Okay. So could he buy a car? Yes. But he's spending $400 more per month over a 36-month period than he needed to.
Mm-hmm.
You can do the math.
Yeah.
How much money did he lose or gain after that?
Yeah, I mean that's a big thing. People don't realize, and maybe some do, but again, it comes down to what can they do about it? Most consumers feel helpless with this process.
They
And
do. And they have the desire, or their first inclination is to roll up into a ball and say, don't come after me. I'm going to hide.
Mhm.
I say the best thing you can do is to stand up and stand tall and say, I'm not going to take this shit anymore.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to represent me and my family as best as I can. And if that means standing up, because I'll tell you something, Not all debt collectors, but a lot of debt collectors are looking for the low-hanging fruit. And if you start fighting, it's not worth it for them to go after you. They'll go after somebody else.
Mhm.
Of that list that they purchased, they're not going to get every one of them. Not nearly, maybe 10%. I'm making up a number, but it's not very much that they'll go after to make it worth it. Then they take the rest of those debts and they sell them to another party. And
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes zombie debt.
Yeah. Tell us about
Whereas,
zombie debt.
oh,
It sounds like the apocalypse of the credit world.
yeah, it is. It's zombie debt is debt that is uncollectible. Each state has their own statute of limitations. Where I live in Minnesota, it's 6 years. So if a debt goes beyond that 6 year period, they cannot sue you for the debt. They cannot try to collect on it. The only way to truly remove a collection item is by bankruptcy. However, after that 6 year period, they can no longer come after you in a lawsuit. If they do, if they lie to you can go after them. And
Right.
I'm not going to get into the details because I
No,
was told not to by my attorney. But if it happens where you find them lying, I just won my own case in this instance
mhm.
on a zombie debt from many years ago. And they tried to collect on it. And then they lied to me by saying it was beyond the statute of limitations, or that it wasn't beyond the
Right.
statute of limitations. Then we sued because they lied.
And a lot of collectors will sue and do that. And I think that's why people do curl up in a ball and they're afraid to stand up because a lot of collectors are very unscrupulous and they're mean. They can be so mean. And I don't mean that in a whiny, oh, you're being mean. I mean, they can get downright nasty.
Yes.
And it's very intimidating for the average consumer. And so it's easy to fall into just how do I make this go away? Or I can't make it go away right now. I'm just going to hide.
Yes. I have a real problem having debt collections on a credit report simply because debt collectors use credit reports as a collection device.
Mhm.
That's what they're using it for. And how can I say that and actually mean what I say? Because once you pay off a debt collection on a credit report, it still stays on from 7 years from that point.
Yeah.
So why don't we just eliminate it from the credit report and once it's paid off? They don't.
Yeah, that's one of those unfair portions of this credit system we're in.
Yeah.
So you have published a lot of articles I've read that are very positive, and I appreciate that aspect of it because bad credit, whether it's being late payments or collections, medical collections, whatever, life happens.
Yes.
We're humans. Life happens, and we fall into this system, as you've pointed out in your own articles, that kind of beat us down and label us consumers who've had issues in the past. And most consumers who have had issues, there's not a perfect human out there. They don't exist. Um, and I like the positive aspects of what you write about. And I think it's important to touch on that to our consumers. I think it's important our consumers realize that one, you're on their side.
Yes.
You've been there. Um, Many of us have. And there are ways to get out of it, but it is a process.
Yes.
And it does not define who you are as a person.
I don't want things to just happen to people, because when you get in front of it and you take charge of it, number one, you feel better, you
Mhm.
stand taller, you make better decisions. And that's what I want. I want people to have the truth. There's so much BS in this field.
Yeah.
It's even worse in politics. Um, I'm talking about the BS factor.
I know.
Um, the biggest part is standing tall, because once you stand up, it makes you feel better. It gives you power back. Okay? Don't ignore anything, because it's not going to go away.
Right.
It'll come back, and it'll haunt you at the worst possible moment. That's when things happen. It's like they smell you.
Yeah.
And remember, I was talking about the soft pulls?
Mhm.
A lot of debt collectors will go on there to see if maybe you purchased something new. Okay? If somebody else sued and won, then they're going to pile on because they know you give up. No, you don't give up. You keep on pounding. That's my biggest statement, is that you stand tall. You know, we've
Yeah.
been browbeat with so much misinformation, even especially through our advertising. It's the subtle stuff. Uh, Again, we can probably go into another episode, but yeah,
And we will. We will definitely be hitting on a lot of this. But I think it's important that we're setting a tone right now. You and I met by happen chance. We happen to be two people who have a passion for clarity on our areas of expertise. That's how we met.
right,
That's how we connected. That's how we became friends. This is why we're doing this for the consumers. We're
right,
here to help the consumers, the everyday people. And we're going to go forward. And obviously, we want to invite our consumers to come along with us.
right.
So you're on Substack. I'm on
Yes,
Substack. You're on Substack. You're on LinkedIn. I've seen you all over the place. You have your books. You're on Amazon. You literally are there. What we want everyone to know, and John, I'm going to let you finish this up, but definitely to all the consumers out there, you have questions? You have your experts sitting right here.
well, thank you. I do write a lot on Substack. I want people to understand what's going on in the financial system, what's going on in the credit scoring system, and soon on the debt collection system.
Yeah.
Again, as I just got through stating, the biggest thing you can do is to stand up. We're not going to take this abuse anymore. That's kind of my mantra.
Mhm.
Um, if we owe money, we should pay it. I get that.
Mhm.
I truly do. But if we if we can't stand tall, how do we teach our children to represent themselves? And I'm not talking going out screaming and ranting and raving and cussing, and I'm not talking anything about that. I'm just saying, nope, this isn't the way it's going to be for me and my family. I'm not going to take food off the table to pay a credit card debt. If that has to, meaning if I'm going, if this debt has to be paid off, it will. But I'm not going to take food off the table for my children. And people are so afraid of debt collectors. It's an important topic that we'll be getting into.
Yeah. Very
Thank
important
you.
topic. You're
Thank you for
welcome.
doing this. I appreciate it. Hopefully, the listeners have gained some knowledge about this, and we're going to continue forward with this uh, video podcast, as it were.
Yeah.
And we're going to start sharing minute pieces of information. And that to me is critically important. So, with your guidance
And
and,
your guidance.
and your interview techniques, we're going forward.
We will go forward and we invite the consumers to come along with us and interject, give us some questions. And, at some point, if we get enough feedback, we could do a Q&A and do a live one too.
Absolutely.
Just remember, we're here for you.